The year is 2003. The Human Genome Project is 99% complete. The United States has begun its invasion of Iraq, and a struggling specialty sports car manufacturer has seemingly made a turnaround after debuting a luxury SUV, the Porsche Cayenne.
That meant not making it the next SUV, or sport wagon, or sport activity vehicle. It meant making it the next Porsche.
Hey, I'm Creech and this is Creech and Cars. In late 2002, under the leadership of Ferdinand Porsche's nephew, and amid faltering 911 sales, Porsche released the Cayenne. It's hard to believe that only 20 years ago, SUVs were mostly uncharted territory, especially luxury ones. The creation of the Cayenne deserves a video of its own, which you might see in the future on this very channel, but for the first model year of 2003, almost 13,000 Cayennes were sold. This proved that there was a market not just for SUVs, but for sporty, luxurious SUVs. Long story short, there is a pretty good chance that Porsche would not be where it is today, and maybe not even around, if it weren't for the Cayenne. As we now know, Porsche would eventually release the smaller Macan, and those two SUVs now combined for 4 times the sales of the 911 annually. After seeing the initial success of the Cayenne, Porsche decided to go all in on it, and announced that the Cayenne would grow into sort of a sub-brand within Porsche. Rep stated that the company was planning on releasing 3 more Cayenne models to accompany the SUV that we all know and love. These 3 editions would be a long wheelbase version, a 2-door coupe version, and then finally a convertible based off of that coupe version. So let's start with the long wheelbase version. This obviously isn't too crazy to imagine, as people at the time were already familiar with long wheelbase luxury sedans like the 7 Series or S-Class, and we know today that there are luxury SUV buyers who will opt for the long wheelbase in models like the Escalade or Range Rover. As for the details on the Cayenne long wheelbase, Porsche has stated that they plan for an increase of 20 centimeters or just under 8 inches. With this extra room, Porsche planned to add a 3rd row to the Cayenne, although it's safe to assume it would still be pretty tight and would have taken up nearly all of the cargo room, as even with an extra 8 inches, the Cayenne isn't a massive vehicle. Porsche never actually built a long wheelbase version for the first-gen Cayenne, at least not one that was shown to the public. And as of this recording, Porsche has never ended up producing a long wheelbase for any generation of the Cayenne. The second model Porsche planned to pursue was the Cayenne 2-door coupe. Emphasis on 2-door because there is now a Sportback Cayenne with 4 doors that Porsche is calling a coupe, despite the definition of coupe literally being a car with 2 doors and a fixed roof. Now, this is where things start to get weird, but in 2002, this actually wasn't that abnormal. Remember that the first SUVs were essentially regular cab trucks with enclosed beds, and at the time of the Cayenne's release, there were other 2-door SUVs available, like the Blazer and Explorer. Although I think the design of a 2-door Cayenne is more complicated than more rugged SUVs like the Blazer or modern Bronco. Design does seem to be one of the reasons Porsche would eventually cancel this expansion of the lineup, but we'll get into that in a little bit. We can still get a good idea of what the coupe would have looked like, as it would most likely have the same body as the convertible, just with a body-colored fixed roof. And finally, the one version of this car that Porsche actually did build is the Cayenne Convertible, or as it was known internally, the Cayenne Package Function Model, or PFM for short. So here it is, a 2-door convertible Porsche Cayenne. The front end is pretty much the same, although the windshield is a little shorter with a little more slope to it. The doors appear to be extended, although Porsche never released official dimensions. This would make sense though, as the Murano Cross Cabriolet's doors were extended by about 8 inches. Past the doors, the convertible looks like it has a bit more of a hip and fender flare than the standard Cayenne. With the top up, the roofline slopes evenly towards the back, and personally I think the Cayenne Convertible has a pretty good looking side profile. It still gives off the Porsche feel, and has the same general shape as the 911 Cabriolet of the time. Porsche also planned for the Cayenne to use a convertible mechanism that was similar to that of the 911, but the soft top on the prototype is just operated manually, as Porsche never went through with building the mechanism as adjusted to the Cayenne's dimensions. The back end is where things get pretty weird. As you can see, it essentially has 2 rear end designs that share even space along the back. I think both rear ends look good, although the driver's side one bears a little more resemblance to the 911, and the passenger side looks a little more like the normal Cayenne. While it definitely looks like a compromise between designers who disagreed, I found one source that said it was just done to experiment with two designs without making two prototypes, while another quoted a Porsche rep as saying there was still disagreement on the rear end in 2002. Moving inside, unfortunately, Porsche hasn't released many pictures of the interior. Here we are shown the dash and front door panels, which are nearly identical to the normal Cayenne. One major issue Porsche assessed during the creation of the prototype was whether or not rear seat passengers could travel comfortably, and my guess is it's probably very tight back there, as Porsche clearly didn't want to show off the rear seats. There are climate vents visible, but it looks like that's about it as far as amenities go. There doesn't even appear to be a cup holder in the back. We can only speculate on performance specs, as Porsche never stated what powertrain or other mechanical features the Cayenne convertible was supposed to have. The Cayenne launched with the S and Turbo model. The S had a 340 horsepower V8, while the Turbo had a 450 horsepower twin-turbo V8. The Cayenne was all-wheel drive with 62% going to the rear wheels. The Turbo model could get to 60 in 5.6 seconds and top out at 165 miles per hour, which isn't too bad even by modern standards. I think if Porsche did produce the convertible version, it would only have been an option for the turbo trim, although they may have planned to make it available for both trim levels. If you're interested in more specs for the first gen Cayenne, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video dedicated to the production model. A lot of concept cars are created almost exclusively as PR stunts, while only some show the next generation of production cars. With the Cayenne convertible, it does seem like Porsche was seriously considering bringing it to production. For this to make sense, you have to keep in mind that Porsche selling an SUV at all was already unexpected and risky, and like I said earlier, people at this time weren't sure what the luxury SUV market would become. And since Porsche's customers knew that the company already had convertibles in the Boxster and 911 Cabriolet, it really wasn't a huge jump to suggest that every Porsche model should have a Cabriolet option. So why did Porsche ultimately decide not to bring it to production? The simple answer is not necessarily that they wouldn't sell any, but they didn't think it would be profitable. Porsche was already taking a huge risk by investing in the production of the normal Cayenne, and sales forecasts just didn't justify taking this risk. While this makes sense to us today, there were some other factors that hindered production of the convertible. The two others that jump out are design and roadworthiness. Starting with the latter, many articles on this prototype make it seem like the Cayenne convertible wasn't built to be drivable, but more digging will reveal that Porsche simply couldn't get a topless Cayenne to meet safety regulations or even have it drive like a normal car. Most of you probably know that any convertible will lose structural rigidity when compared to its coupe counterpart. When building the Cayenne convertible, Porsche engineers found this loss of rigidity to be amplified with the SUV body style. Porsche eventually realized that producing a roadworthy Cayenne convertible would take a lot more time and a lot more money. The third and final reason the Cayenne convertible didn't make it was design. Porsche executives at the time found the convertible model to be ungainly and with looks that were simply unworthy of the Porsche name. Current chief of design Michael Maurer had this to say in 2019 when he looked back on the design, quote, "An SUV as a convertible is a challenge both aesthetically and formally. An SUV always has a large and heavy body. You combine this with a small top half and then cut off the roof, you get very strange shapes emerging from that. Personally, I don't think it looks terrible. I think it looks a lot better than the Murano Cross Cabriolet and the Evoque convertible. Like I said earlier, especially from the side, it definitely gives off a 911 Cabriolet vibe. And it looks better than I would have imagined a Cayenne convertible to look. So that's the story of the Porsche Cayenne convertible that almost made it. The package function model prototype still exists and is stored in the Porsche Museum, although it's not currently on display. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about the Cayenne convertible in the comments. Do you think this is something Porsche should have at least tried? Would you drive a convertible Cayenne or convertible SUV at all? I'm really interested to hear some opinions on convertible SUVs. Also, if you've been subscribed for a while, you might notice that I've already made this video. I decided to re-record it because the audio on the first one is terrible, and I put a lot of effort into the editing and script and research and stuff for this video. So I hope you enjoyed the better audio, or if you haven't seen this video before, I hope that everything looks nice and sounds nice. Anyways, for more content around car news, history, and culture, check out the channel and subscribe so you don't miss future videos.